When we head to the theater to see a Pixar movie, we expect to see callbacks to previous films, and of course the classic Pizza Planet delivery truck, just like you go to CVS and expect a giant receipt. But seeing references to classic horror movies that scarred us for life like The Shining, not so much. Move over Lotso Huggin' Bear because there are new terrors in Toy Story 4, even if you didn't notice them during your first watch. But don't worry, because as usual, we here at CBR are going to fill you in on some jokes you might not have picked up on, and some of them are surprisingly dark for a kids movie. When we think about masters of the horror genre, we generally think of people like Alfred Hitchcock, Clive Barker, and Stanley Kubrick. We usually don't think of Pixar animation. But apparently this famous animation studio decided to really ramp up the dark and terrifying factor for this movie, and honestly, we approve. When Woody and Forky visit the antique shop, you might have been distracted by all of the absolutely terrifying ventriloquist dummies, and we don't blame ya. Even the horrifying suicidal fork creature found them unsettling. But did you notice the record that was playing as the nightmare dummies and Gabby Gabby took them into the back of the shop? That old-timey sounding tune is called Midnight, the Stars, and You, performed by Ray Noble and his orchestra. Horror fans might recognize it from the end of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. That's definitely one way to enhance the atmosphere and make it all the more terrifying. There was another even easier to miss reference to this classic horror movie in a scene where Ducky and Bunny imagine following a helpless old woman home and attacking her while she sleeps. Are we sure this is a kid's movie? When we see the woman's address, we see it's number 237, the same number as a rather infamous room at the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. And the fact that we saw this woman briefly take a bath before going to bed makes this unsettling connection all the more obvious. After including some references to Kubrick's classic horror film, Cooley also decided to pay tribute to the famous science fiction movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. In Toy Story 4, Woody tells his pal Buzz Lightyear that he does what his inner voice tells him to do. Of course, Woody is being metaphorical and talking about his conscience, or at least we think he is. We're not completely sure how the minds or anatomy of toys work in this universe, to be honest, but Buzz believes Woody is talking about the voice he emits when his string is pulled. So when Buzz finds himself in peril, he tries to listen to his inner voice by pressing his buttons. You might have been blown away by the overwhelming amount of space-themed voice bits this toy has, but one of them should have sounded pretty familiar. At one point, his voice said, "Open the pod bay doors," which is a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey. You probably know that Toy Story 4 isn't the only movie in the franchise to feature references to The Shining, but of course it features some less grim references as well. There are a few things which just seem to pop up in the Toy Story universe that we're always on the lookout for, including the Dinoco gas station. In the Toy Story universe, their logo is an Apatosaurus, but in the Cars franchise, it's a T-Rex. In the first Toy Story, we saw Andy's family stopping here on the way to Pizza Planet, and it's the same brand of gas station where Bonnie and her family stop on their road trip. And of course, who could forget Pizza Planet itself, or more specifically, the Pizza Planet delivery truck? It's been in so many Pixar movies that it prompted a fan theory stating that they all take place in the same universe. You might have had some trouble spotting this vehicle in Toy Story 4, and that's because it wasn't on the road. Instead, it showed up on a tattoo located on the ankle of a carnival employee working the game where Ducky and Bunny were found. Did you know that the very first Toy Story movie almost involved another non-fictional brand of toy? Pixar wanted to depict a classic G.I. Joe in their universe, but the folks over at Hasbro said absolutely not. Why? Well, it had a little something to do with the fact that it was going to get blown up by Sid. We have some bad news for them about what kids in real life tended to do with their toys in that case, but Pixar dealt with it by coming up with Combat Carl, who we did see get blown up by Sid in the first movie, along with some other wounded Combat Carls in Sid's room. Thankfully, the 3 Combat Carls we saw in Toy Story 4 were in much better shape, even if one of them was feeling a little bit left out. Apparently, even living on your own in a park is better than living with Sid. When the Combat Carls spoke, you might have noticed a very familiar voice, and that's because it belongs to a real-life Carl. Yes, that's none other than Carl Weathers, the actor famous for films like Predator and Rocky. Toy Story 4 was a solid flick, which got great ratings, and right from the beginning it was making bank at the box office. But we have a feeling most fans feel it pales in comparison to the over-the-top adventure / heart-wrenching piece of cinema that was Up. In that movie, we saw the poignant yet brief love story of Carl and Ellie, which started out when Ellie gave Carl a grape soda bottle cap when the two of them were just kids. We watched the two of them share the adventure of life together and learned the curmudgeonly Carl kept the soda top all these years, later giving it to Russell as a sign of their friendship. But in Toy Story 4, we saw an identical grape soda bottle cap being treated like, well, a piece of trash. When it's offered to Bo Peep along with some other scavenged items, she declares it's garbage and says to ditch it. That loud sound you heard afterward was just our hearts breaking. Don't worry about it. This one is going to take you way back to A Bug's Life, which came out all the way back in 1998. Yeah, we know it feels like it just hit theaters yesterday, so sorry if that made you feel old. In A Bug's Life, we saw a variety of discarded items making up the city with some strange brand names on them. They're named after the writer's children and include things like Juju's Litter, Hannah's Bananas, and PJ Pop, which we spotted in the wall of the bar. PJ is the son of John Lasseter, who's worked on tons of your favorite Disney and Pixar movies, including the Toy Story franchise. In Toy Story 4, there are some signs for PJs Pop located in Second Chance Antiques. Not only is this a shout out to PJ, but to John Lasseter as well, since he's actually PJs Pop. Speaking of recycling, Pixar does like to recycle certain objects in their movies, some of which have become quite famous over the years. One of these is the notorious Luxo Ball, who first appeared in the short Luxo Jr. You've probably spotted it in tons of your favorite movies, including Up, Cars 2, The Incredibles, and of course the Toy Story movies. It's the ball Buzz Lightyear bounces on to prove he can fly in the very first movie, and it wouldn't be Toy Story 4 without it. During the scene where the toys look down upon the landscape of the antique shop, you can see the Luxo Ball is there. There's another reference to a rather vintage piece of Disney memorabilia in the same antique shop. We all know the toys have to completely freeze and stop what they're doing when a human is around who might see them. When the antique shop owner turns to look at Woody, he freezes while holding an old phone. You know, one of the old ones with a cord that goes into the wall that we all had to use before text messaging was a thing. Truly some dark times, but some homes made it bearable by featuring a Mickey Mouse phone in the 70s and 80s, which featured the Disney mascot in a pose just like the one we saw Woody strike. While it may be a great place for antiques, the shop isn't really a great place to be a toy. Well, unless you're one of those super creepy ventriloquist dummies. They seem to be happy enough. Terrifyingly happy, but still. Later in the movie, we learned that the toys tend to hang out inside of an old pinball machine where they're safe from the evil cat who patrols the aisles, as well as the aforementioned nightmare dummies. Things are a bit crowded in the machine, but if you look closely, you'll see some familiar faces, at least if you've kept up with Pixar shorts. Earlier, we mentioned John Lasseter, who worked on many great Pixar projects, including a short called Tin Toy. It tells the story of a tin toy aptly named Tinny, who's worried about letting a small child play with him, which is a fair concern to be honest. We've seen Tinny and his pals in numerous Toy Story movies since. Everybody knows tin toys exist in real life, and they're kinda cute in a quaint way. But sometimes you just want a much flashier toy capable of doing amazing things. Enter Duke Kaboom, who, we hate to break it to you, is not a real person. In Toy Story 4, he's voiced by beloved actor Keanu Reeves, and is clearly supposed to be an homage to American stuntman and entertainer Evel Knievel. Duke Kaboom's white and red outfit, emblazoned with the iconic Canadian maple leaf, is clearly a joke about Evel Knievel's rather bold outfit choices. In the movie, we learned that Duke Kaboom once belonged to a child who expected him to be able to replicate the high-flying stunts he did in the commercials. If you've ever been personally let down by a television commercial, then you know this kid's pain. Instead of just accepting that life is a series of disappointments and making the best of it, he chose to give up Duke Kaboom, which gave the poor toy some serious complexes. Although this is something most of us have experienced, it was meant to poke fun at actual Evel Knievel toys, which also looked way more amazing on television than they were in real life. But at the end of the movie, we did get to see Duke Kaboom pull off a frankly spectacular jump off the Ferris wheel. It was a triumphant moment as he sailed through the air, and it reminded us of another classic movie moment from the classic Steven Spielberg film. This scene in Toy Story 4 was really close to the iconic scene in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, where E.T. and Elliot sail through the air on a bicycle. Only instead of escaping from a terrifying government facility, Duke Kaboom escaped from a nicely appointed antique shop. Close enough. If you stuck around for after the movie, you saw that there was not one but 3 mid-credit scenes. The first involves yet another one of Ducky and Bunny's weird fantasies about attacking humans, but this time, it's the carnival employee who had previously imprisoned him, and in addition to leaping at his face, Bunny also shoots him with laser eyes. When Duke asks if he really has laser eyes, he's assured that's the case, to which he replies, "Whoa." It may seem simple, but it's a reference to earlier Keanu Reeves films, where the actor was very well known for his dazed whoa. We all love Keanu, but you know what we're less thrilled about? Those gosh darn nightmare dummies in Toy Story 4 called the Bensons. But it might surprise you to know the nightmare of the Bensons almost started a lot earlier in the franchise. You know your favorite cowboy Sheriff Woody? Well, originally he wasn't going to be a soft cuddly doll, but rather a ventriloquist dummy. Thankfully, the fine folks at Pixar realized that would undoubtedly give its young audience no shortage of nightmares. Plus, are kids playing with ventriloquist dummies even a thing? That's even creepier than the way Sid played with his toys when he was a kid. The Bensons are actually based on original character art created for Woody. According to producer Mark Mielson, the Bensons were supposed to be creepy, so congratulations Pixar, you did it. The poor animators were forced to interact with these dummies as research to study how they moved, so they could get it just right. But these particular dummies look like one particular dummy from something which might not be quite as horrifying as The Shining, but it's close, especially if you're a kid. The Bensons look almost exactly like Slappy from the Goosebumps Night of the Living Dummy series written by R.L. Stine. As much as we love the original Toy Story movie, it was very nearly a different film, and not just because Woody was almost a literal dummy. While the animation was amazing, the crew was trying to make the characters seem edgier, but ended up just making them all pretty unlikable. The team had to ask for an extension to fix the characters and do a major rehaul of the entire script. The second movie also had tons of technical difficulties. It was originally supposed to be a direct-to-DVD sequel because most of the team was busy working on A Bug's Life. With limited time and resources before its sudden theatrical release, things were tight when all of a sudden they got much worse. One of the animators was doing some routine cleaning when they inadvertently deleted the majority of the project. Luckily, one of the animators had made a copy so she could work at home while on maternity leave. America's maternity leave may be shameful compared to other countries, but at least it saved Toy Story 2. In the beginning of the fourth movie, we see a car with the license plate RMR F97. This is a reference to the fact that the animator had pressed RMRF, which had caused 97% of the movie to get erased. Everybody knows the hit Randy Newman song, You've Got a Friend in Me. It plays at the beginning of Toy Story 4, just in case seeing old scenes of Andy playing with Woody wasn't making you tear up enough. In addition to that classic, we also had some new songs by Randy Newman to enjoy, one of which was particularly hilarious. The existence of Forky raises no shortage of interesting questions about the way the world works in the Toy Story universe. But sadly, none of them are actually answered in the movie. Forky is kind of like a Mr. Meeseeks from Rick and Morty, in that he feels like he's overstayed his welcome and is desperate for a sweet release. In this case, the sweet release is being in the trash can, and Forky tries desperately to throw himself away while Woody keeps rescuing him. The song which plays during this time is called I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away, and it couldn't be more appropriate considering the circumstances. We also got to hear another great Randy Newman song during the movie which plays at the end. It's called The Ballad of the Lonesome Cowboy, which is still a great song, even if Woody is definitely not particularly lonesome. But getting back to the wackiness of the Toy Story universe, we're sure you've heard the theory that all Pixar movies exist during different time periods in the same universe. Although it hasn't been confirmed, fans of the theory point to Easter eggs like the Pizza Planet truck showing up in so many movies. One of the fun theories surrounding this is that Boo from Monsters, Inc. grows up to become the witch from Brave, who transforms Mordu into a bear. Could she have done this because Sully kinda looks like a bear? When Bonnie is having her kindergarten orientation in Toy Story 4, we can see an out-of-focus kid who looks an awful lot like Boo. There's another Monsters, Inc. reference later when we see Bunny who looks a lot like Sully. They both have blue and green fur, floppy ears, and similar builds. Will Boo and Bunny ever encounter one another? You know, before Boo turns into a witch and starts turning people into bears? Even if you don't love the Pixar shared universe fan theory, you have to admit the idea of Boo and Bunny is pretty darn cute. In the first Toy Story, we were introduced to Sid, who certainly seemed like a villain when we were kids. After all, he tormented his toys and modified them to make weird nightmare creatures. But let's consider the fact that Sid had no way of knowing these toys were sentient. After all, nobody thinks Bonnie is evil for leaving Woody in a closet. If anything, Sid was just expressing his creativity by creating Babyface, the multi-legged spider-leg baby doll. It was this Babyface we couldn't help but think of when we saw the octopus ride at the carnival. Its big round head and multiple appendages was likely a nod towards this character from the first movie, who we all thought was scary until we met the horror that is the Bensons. We know there were tons of them to choose from, but what was your favorite lighthearted moment or movie reference from Toy Story 4? Tell us your pick in the comment section below and then click on the subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.